an activist in Detroit, and was also married to an activist who was also part of the auto industry. And it's interesting because sometimes I look for a piece of reading that will like just say everything that I want to say. I haven't found it yet. And so I think that there's also something about us needing to write to say the things that we want to say, but one of the great things is to be inspired by other people's ideas. So there's many things in this that inspire me. There's some things that I think I want to push back on, but I think that's
of course you do. You're
what I learned how to
funny.
do here. Which I'm really grateful for because I didn't know how to do that before, and I'm still learning on it. So she was making remarks at the Allied Media Conference, I think that took place in Detroit, and it was in 2008. A rebellion is important, and she's reflecting on her experience in the 1960s and being an activist, and questioning some of it. A rebellion is important, we said, because it throws into question the legitimacy and supposed permanence of existing institutions. A revolution, however, requires that a people go beyond struggling against oppressive institutions and make an revolutionary leap towards becoming more self-conscious, more self-critical, more socially responsible human beings. In order to transform the world, they must transform themselves. Thus, unlike rebellions, which erupt spontaneously and usually last only a few days, revolutions require a patient and protracted process of two-sided transformational struggles. Going beyond rejections to projections, they bring onto the historical stage human beings who are practicing new, more socially responsible and loving relationships to one another and to the earth. In the rebellions of the 1960s, there was a lot of very righteous and understandable anger because in the 1960s we defined ourselves by our oppression, not by the power that we have within us to create new, loving relationships. The movements of the 60s were led mostly by men, coming out of a patriarchal culture. So there was a lot of top-down vertical leadership. At most of our meetings, conferences, and demonstrations, charismatic males made bitter and angry masses, angry and more bitter. The focus was on replacing white power with black power. There was a lot of competition for leadership, a lot of militarism. In the 1960s, the model for revolution came from the lives of men outside the home. There was none of the love and caring that is an organic part of the everyday lives of women. None of the appreciation of diversity that goes into the raising of a family. For example, when women like Elaine Brown became leaders in those days, it was because they were as tough as men. Ella Baker was the exception. Our meetings were mostly mass meetings to agitate and mobilize faceless masses. There was none of the respectful listening to everyone, no breaking up into small groups. Sorry, I missed that part. And I'm really glad you did it. So that everyone can participate and contribute. None of the laughter that has made this conference such a joy. Our meetings and our demonstrations lacked the sense that I have gotten this weekend, that our souls and the souls of those we worked with are growing. That in our relationships and in our community organizing, we are patiently building a spiritual framework for our everyday lives. Today, we are not agitating or mobilizing faceless masses, but organizing a community base of caring individuals transforming ourselves and becoming the change that we want to see in the world. But not of the type of just believing everything is going to be fine, but because some of what she speaks to in terms of the roles that men and women play, I actually see as changing. I know many men who are the caring family person that she speaks of, women having only carried that role. It reminds me of the book that we read when we first got here.
The Second Shift.
Yes. And so what's hopeful to me is that what she was saying in 2008 about the 1960s, like, I think has changed over the past decade. I still think that there's a ton of work to do. And one of the things that I really like that she has to say is about the significance of us being in conversation with others and in community with others. I just had an experience. I went down to the firehouse to visit with some old friends. And one of the things I always liked about that is being in a community that was so different from any, like, I never got to be in a fire department before until I came here. But definitely there were people that I encountered that had really different opinions and who still do. I was talking a little bit about in walking around campus, or the other day down in the Ville, I saw lots of bunnies. And I had now, like, in Oakland where I live, I see a lot more homeless people than I do bunnies. In fact, I don't ever see bunnies hopping around Oakland. And so the friend that I was talking to, he said, yeah, we gotta close those borders so that, until we take care of our homeless problem. And I just like really tightened up because it spoke to a community that I love very much, the students that I've taught forever in Oakland, most of whom would not be here if our current government and past governments were more successful in maintaining walls. But I was thinking just about the significance of staying in dialogue with people, and that revolution is going to take our being in conversation with others, particularly those with whom we have very different ideas. And I think it also speaks a little bit to the feeling of vulnerability, because in those spaces you don't always feel safe. And in those spaces you don't always feel like everybody's at one, because they're not. And so that's something that has inspired me by being here, is that being able to hold the tension of very different ideas and the importance of making sure that we talk to other people who are not always on the same page as we are.
Thank you so much.